Pickaxe.
And welcome back to the Review of Death, your fortnightly home for Doctor Who news and reviews. I'm Matthew Toffolo. I'm joined, as always, by my constant companion throughout the world of Doctor Who. It's
Life,
Billy.
Love.
Yeah.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Hello,
life,
everyone.
Love. And I was trying to think if there was some sort of an L that we could attribute to Doctor Who.
Loathing.
No, yes. Very good. Very good. How you doing, bud? You all right?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Yeah, really good. I was very, very excited to talk about today's episode, Invasion of Time. Obviously, we've got a little bit of news to get to before that. But unfortunately, all of the love drained out of my eyes getting through the end of the Invasion of Time. So we'll see how we go as we move through the episodes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've got a little bit of something to say, something that I've been meaning to say for weeks. But there's some new Doctor Who books out. Beth from Penguin very kindly sent us these Doctor Who books to look at. We've got Doctor Who, Frankenstein and the Patchwork Man, and then we've got Shirley Jackson and the Chaos Box with the 15th Doctor. Unusual to see him at the moment as he's off the telly. But
well, they just announced another book, didn't they?
They did. It looked quite good. I thought it was quite a nice
and
cover.
The annual.
And the annual as well. It seems bittersweet sort of seeing him on stuff now. It's sort of like, oh, but you're not here anymore.
It was always the plan.
Yeah. So, thank you very much to Penguin for sending these over. And I will try and read them soon and report back to you as to what's good. I'm really looking forward to the Eccleston one, actually, because...
Feel free to read them to me, overnight. Just give me a call and lull me to sleep.
I'll read you the first sentence. Beware.
In Shooty's voice. Do a John Coleshaw.
Yeah. I don't want to get cancelled, thank you. I'm amazed he got away with it.
We've done quite well up to this point as well, so...
Yeah, we have. We've done very, very well. News. What's going on in the world of Doctor Who? Not much.
Fuck all. Well, no. There's a little bit to talk about. We spoke about this in a bit more detail on the Review of Death Patreon, so if you want to go and check out the Regenerations tier list, which everybody seems to have really enjoyed over there, then go and visit the Patreon, become a member. But Doctor Who is getting an animation for preschoolers that will air on CBBC.
Yes, this was announced the day our last episode came out, wasn't it? We just missed it. I love the idea. I think, why not?
Me too.
Great. Seems fun.
Very exciting.
What do we think? New Doctor Who? Completely new Doctor?
Completely new Doctor. I think whoever they cast, it won't be Billy, and I don't think it will be whoever follows Billy either. I think it's going to be a completely original Doctor Who, which is really exciting. Peter Cushing. Now that would be good.
Bring him back.
The thrilling adventures of Doctor Who. I'm really excited for it, and very interesting that neither Bad Wolf nor Russell is involved. It's being done by CBeebies and BBC Studios, and they are currently holding an open pitch submission season for people to send all of their stuff to. So I can't wait for it.
I've sent in my Action Figure Adventure showreel.
Excellent. There you go. You'll definitely get the job now. But I'm very excited for it, and it does seem to be pretty well timed, I think, with the generation that grew up with Doctor Who. In the early 2000s, having families of their own, and I think it's perfectly timed, and I cannot wait for it. I'm more excited for that than any news about the main series, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I don't blame you, to be honest. I mean, I'm so nonplussed now about anything to do with the new series, especially seeing as we've just had in the production notes, Russell was like, nothing's happening, so I'm going off for a bit. Bye. I guess production notes at this point would end up being, tonight still I had beans on toast for my dinner.
Called my sisters, went to bed early. Well, there's been a lot of rumour and innuendo going around about the development of New Doctor Who. Lots of Reddit threads, lots of Gallifrey base forum posts So I've tried to condense some stuff down.
Okay.
And if there's anything I've missed, if a new rumour has popped up in the last 48 hours, then you'll have to let me know. But going off their internal data, Disney apparently wished for a show that catered for a teenage audience. And it was more along the lines of Stranger Things in the audience it was targeting, and I guess the tone. But Russell believed that the fun and campy tone he developed was the key to Doctor Who's success in the long term, which was at odds with Disney. The new streamer...
imagine their disappointment when Space Babies turned up. They must have thought,
it was like, this is the antithesis of what we asked for.
They went, tear up that contract, go on.
Yeah, tear up that contract. The new streamer apparently has lots of creatives eager to sink their teeth into Doctor Who, but Russell is cautious as he's known for being highly selective about who he gets in to write for the show. The BBC is rumoured to be behind Russell, but knows they can't continue to make the show without a new partner and might have to make concessions such as moving Bad Wolf on and bringing in a new creative team. Wow. But apparently they also have a contingency plan which would keep Doctor Who within the Blythe fold, but lead to fewer episodes. So perhaps just 1 or 2 specials a year. And the potential new streaming partner is apparently on the same scale as Disney Plus, which would boil it down to Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount, and Apple TV. So no actual movement, but that is apparently, according to the rumour mill, where we're at with all that stuff.
Neither here nor there, is it really, at the moment?
No, see you guys in 8 months when we've got more rumours and innuendo to go through.
Yeah. Billie Piper was at a convention with David Tennant, wasn't she, the other day? And someone asked her,
she was.
Are you the 16th Doctor? And she shrugged. I wonder if that was a shrug because she didn't know. For real?
Or I haven't been contacted since I shot that in my hotel room 4 weeks ago, so...
I was just told to look down the lens and go, hello.
Hello, how you doing? And Peter Davison has weighed in on her casting.
Yeah.
It's a completely mad idea. I don't think she's the Doctor. I just kind of... I think it's just kind of a hand grenade thrown into the final episode to try and go, whoa, what's this? Which I think is such a great analogy for it. It really does feel like that, doesn't it?
It really does. God bless him, Peter. He's on the money.
Yeah, and he'll never be invited back. But it is interesting how many people have who are somehow tied to the programme, either through the past or through sort of slightly less concrete ways, have been either dubious or not pass comment at all about what's going on.
Yeah. Sometimes that's it, isn't it? Sometimes saying nothing speaks volumes.
Or posting a photo of you with your actor friend who got cut from the final episode before posting your reaction. That was Katie, do you remember?
Who? No, what was she? Did she post it?
She shared a photo before she posted one of her, very enthusiastic reviews. Yeah. She posted a photo of her with Carol Ann Ford.
Right.
Her hugging her. So I wonder if she got news that she'd been cut before it came out.
Yeah, that was something that was mentioned in the production notes, I think. I think Russell was like, he was like, something like, what about Susan? Will we ever meet the boss? I was like, probably not, no.
He just left it as a question, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably best to not promise stuff you can't deliver.
No. I mean, even if the series was on the air, I still don't believe that we might get a decent delivery of that promise. And then he was mouthing off some waffle about Omega, and I wanted to change his backstory, so the Time Lord did it, and all this bollocks, and then somehow tying that into colonialism and Winston Churchill or something. He's going mad. He's saying any old rubbish.
I don't know what it is, and I shudder using this term, and I'm not using it in a way that, a lot of people tend to use it, but some of it really does come across as sort of virtue signalling, and not in like a not in the way that we would all accept as like, oh no, you've got to raise awareness of a certain plight or a certain situation, whatever. Just almost like a point scoring exercise in, how much of this stuff can I mention that gives me kudos with both?
Yeah, it's
like
really...
the gun thing with the sonic screwdriver, and there's been loads of them, but that one immediately jumps to mind.
Yeah, it was just so weird. It was like, well, what the fuck's that got to do with anything? What's that got to do with him? I go, what?
It's like he's thought more about that than the concrete sort of structures of his own story.
Yeah. Oh dear. Well, there we are. Forever a Doctor Who fan when you've got to try and come up with some mad theory to make your continuity work. The only other thing to talk about is these little fellas came out. We had Beat the Meat.
That Matt nearly showed off on a live stream.
I nearly leaked this Doctor on a live stream on Instagram the other day. So that was very lucky that I didn't do that. They've sold 80%, I think, already. They went very quickly. Understandably so. They're brilliant. I absolutely adore this figure. Beat the Meep, or the Meep, is fantastic. Really,
didn't you
really
say
good.
It was probably one of your favourite figures in the whole range?
Yeah. Oh, it's superb. It's amazing. It's so good. It's just been sat on my desk. It was on my desk when we recorded the last episode, but it was just out of shot.
Yeah, you showed me the box, and that was very exciting.
Yeah. So there you are. You can come around and have a play with it in a couple of weeks' time when you're...
Can't wait.
And the meat.
That's the main concern.
So there we go. Is that everything?
There we go. I think
else?
that is like. Until tomorrow, inevitably they announce that Helen Mirren's the new Doctor and they're shooting in 6 weeks. I think that's pretty much all our bases covered. So, let's get on to talking about the Invasion of Time, which is an episode that has been on the Rod spreadsheet since the beginning of time. I've wanted to talk about it for ages because I've always had a real soft spot for this story. In an era of Doctor Who that I don't really regard that fondly.
Yes, I know what you mean.
I'm not big on the Graham Williams era.
No.
And I find season 15, 16, 17 all sort of morph into one big, sludgy, beige, badly rendered ball. But
you get a few nuggets, don't you, in there?
Sprinkled throughout. Yeah.
But on the whole, it can be a bit of a slog.
And so I came into this with, real excitement because, I've always had a soft spot for this story, as I say. And for the first, 2 or 3 episodes, that enthusiasm was still there.
Yeah.
By the end of episode 4, obviously it peaked again because the Sontarans turn up in what is, I think, one of Doctor Who's best ever cliffhangers, and it still has that effect, but we'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
And then by the end of part 6, I was wishing for death. I would just wanted to expire rather than struggle through the rest of it.
Yes, it is.
It's a bit of a mess, isn't it?
It is a bit of a mess. It's a shame. It's funny actually because I, as a kid, never rated this story at all. It never resonated with me whatsoever. I always enjoyed it when the Sontarans turned up. Now that has sort of flipped on its head, and I enjoy episodes 1 to 4, and then 5 and 6 become, like you said, a bit of a slog. I think for me as a kid, it was just the Vardens, seeing those pieces of tinfoil on coat hangers being, wiggled about. And I think in a season, like you said, that's already a bit creaky, I think that was sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Because I've always been very, like, even as a kid, the dodgy effects never really bothered me as it does some people. But I think that was like one of the very few times where I was like, my suspension of disbelief, not that I knew what that was as a little child watching this on a double VHS set, but it was like, no way. So it was only really until the DVD came out and they did the updated special effects with the better Vardens that I began to appreciate this a lot more. And I think always in the back of my mind is like, this feels like it is like a poor man's sequel to The Deadly Assassin as well.
Yeah.
So again, I think there's a bit of that where I'm like, well, it's not as good as that. I mean, when you look at how, I mean, obviously it's David Maloney did Deadly Assassin, so it's got that fantastic. It just looks so good, you know.
Yeah. And Robert Holmes. So.
And Robert Holmes and everything, yeah. But visually, this looks like, okay, a studio. Some of the sets are a bit iffy, like the corridors.
And there's like 4 of them as well.
Yeah, there's about 4. Yeah, Gallifrey is very small. The corridors are hilarious because when you've got, particularly in episode 1, when you've got the Chancery Guard, who are fucking hopeless, chasing after the Tom, there's like pillars and stuff in the way that the corridor is so narrow, they have to like run around the pillar to do it. It is so insane.
It's quite a nice set, actually, the corridor, and you can see it's been built with, you know, the idea that they'll shoot it from multiple angles in mind. But around the sort of hour mark where it is just, you realise at that point the story is walking up and down corridors.
Yeah.
And there's very little going on. I mean, let's talk about the story. So basically the Doctor makes a deal with the Vardens. We don't see, it starts in media res, so we don't see how they made contact. We don't know what this deal is, but the Doctor signs a contract.
Yeah.
I never sign anything without reading it. And he's talking to these egg-shaped chairs.
Yes, yeah.
And Leela's in the TARDIS wondering what's going on. K9 is basically saying, keep stum, all right, the Doctor's up to something.
Yeah.
The Doctor comes back in the TARDIS.
All that stuff's great, because it really does build up the mystery, and you think, God, what is going on here?
And he's just being thoroughly unpleasant to her as well through the whole of the first, 3 episodes, while he's under this... You know, it's difficult to tell sometimes, is he actually under some kind of mesmeric control from the Vardens, or is he just playing along the entire time? But he tells K9 to tell Leela to shut up, and is just generally very unpleasant to her, threatens her with dog violence as well. Yeah. So then Leela goes off, has a swim in the TARDIS swimming pool to cool off, and then comes back and everything's fine.
Yeah.
They land on Gallifrey. And then the Doctor stakes his claim to become Lord President of Gallifrey, following on from the events of
Deadly Assassin. Yeah.
It's very
Which
tied
is nice.
into that.
It's a nice bit of continuity.
And visually as well, the continuity is really strong. So apparently Roger Murray Leach was supposed to design this, but wasn't available.
Oh, really? Oh, what a shame.
They have obviously taken all of the relevant cues to build the Panopticon and, you know, all the Time Lord garb and, you know, that whole environment.
I was wondering, how much of that was left over from the Deadly Assassin. I imagine a lot of the sets weren't, and I guess it was just rebuilt, like you said, to old spec or, you know, old images.
Bits of it
all the costumes have obviously all been reused from Assassin.
Yeah.
Taken out of Longleat and Blackpool.
Exactly, dragged out before they got burnt down. But they do... It does feel like the Panopticon, especially, maybe the scaffolding structure was they just copied it from a plan or something, and they just re-embellished it. Yeah. Because it's very strikingly similar.
Yeah. Which is good, because at least it feels like the same planet. Because obviously, it's one of the very few times actually where Gallifrey feels like there is a sense of continuity. Because obviously, you see it in the 3 Doctors. Well, if you see it in the War Games, it's then drastically different in the 3 Doctors, is then drastically different again in Deadly Assassin, and then when we see it again in Arc of Infinity, and it looks like some sort of 80s waiting room in an airport or something.
It looks like a really swish bank. You know, you're just waiting to meet your bank manager in a corridor.
Yeah, it's very weird.
It's very weird. So the Doctor goes to see Barusa.
He's very
and
good.
They have a chat. He's very good. Him and Milton Johns are fantastic.
Yeah, they're both good. There's some good... those are the 2 standout characters, I think. It's Barusa and Castellan Kellner. We'll get to Andrid in a bit, but he's... What a wet fart.
Blanket.
Yeah. I think I prefer this version of Barusa to... the other version's great. But obviously this guy's got a lot more to do, so he's able to flesh it out a lot more. But he does that very good job. The way he plays it, it's like you almost sort of think, oh, is he a bit of a baddie? Or, but obviously he's good. But then obviously he turns out to be a baddie in the end, much later on. So it was good foresight from that actor.
It was. And I do like the interplay between him and Tom. Like, you do get a sense of, I mean, they say it in the episode, but I think just between them, you get a sense of, the master and the apprentice. And I think Tom commanding him, screaming at him, maybe we get a bit of a peek behind the curtain as to what it's like to live with Tom Baker in those moments. And I think he's, I don't really like episodes where the Doctor's not being the Doctor, either because he's being duplicitous or because he is under some sort of control. But this is different to, say, Mind Warp, where that just feels like it's labouring the story. And given how short Colin's run is, it's like, oh, great, another story where he's acting out of character.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, because Tom does have a sort of malevolent edge to him on occasions, it does work. You do buy, like, okay, has he been suckered in by the promise of riches or of like total freedom away from the Time Lords, because he's always got a gripe against the Time Lords dragging him out of time and all of that. It's just a shame that it's the Vardens that are the ones that are finally sort of making the Doctor turn evil, because they are shocking. They're shocking in execution, obviously. Yeah. Whether it's, Tinseltown or the three least imposing men you could have hired for that job. It
is so funny, isn't it? Like you can sort of say, all right, the foil, we'll let that pass because they obviously,
you have just shot Underworld after all.
Exactly. But you can sort of, all right, you wanted to have some sort of like weird shimmery energy. Okay, we'll let that pass. But then when they turn up looking like 3 Jerry Anderson puppets crossed with the Rocketeer, it's just so, and the main guy is crap. He can't act. He's got a really weird, stilted way of acting.
Now we have him, and the constant cutting back to, the final phase will begin, and all that is just like, fucking get on with it. But I mean, it's terrible.
Is he at the beginning of episode 4? I think the Doctor even says, disappointing, aren't they? When Castellan Kellner's like, oh, they're just humans. He's like, yeah, it's disappointing, aren't they? And I wonder if that was written in as a, they look fucking awful.
We run out of money.
Yeah. It's
annoying
a shame.
You didn't say that 2 episodes before when we were all thinking that, when they fucking turn up shimmering in the Panopticon.
Yeah.
Crap, aren't they? They look a bit shit, don't they?
Gentlemen, I present to you your new masters. Very good for wrapping up chicken and other products.
And if you get a bit cold, you can wear one. They don't work. And so the history of this story from a production perspective is very troubled. So it was written in 2.5 weeks because a story by David Weir called Killers of the Dark was considered too complex and too expensive to shoot.
Okay.
Robert Holmes was going to write this one, or was asked to write this one, but he didn't want to commit to coming back, having just left as script editor.
Right. Okay.
He suggested selling it on Gallifrey, splitting the story into 2 segments, and having the Sontarans come back in the second half.
Not like that though.
No, not like that. And obviously, it's the end of the season, so there is no money.
Yeah.
And there was even consideration either to scrapping the story entirely and rolling the budget over to the next season, but Graham Williams thought that inflation at the time in the UK would depreciate the money even further, so they wouldn't even have that much more to play with for the following year.
And what was the previous story was Underworld, wasn't it?
Yeah, which they even considered scrapping and allocating the time and the budget for that.
They should have done that.
To Invasion of Time.
They should have killed Underworld and given the money to Invasion of Time, just to polish the edges. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And then production hits another snag when they get into the studio because industrial action forces the BBC to relocate studio scenes at St Anne's Hospital. And I mean, it's a bit of it's a tale of woe from beginning to end, really, this story. It's a miracle that it made it to screen, but it is, I think, the closest to Sharda that Doctor Who got without becoming a Sharda. You know, imagine if we only had the first 4 parts of this, and then the last 2 episodes weren't made, but we knew it was going to be the Sontarans turn up at the end. You know, this would have been the most copied and remade episode of Doctor Who ever.
Yeah. And then they'd have finally made it into an animation, and it would have been really stilted and boring because it would just be them running around the same bloody bit of corridor. I mean, I gotta say, can you imagine if this was mounted in the studio? All those TARDIS interior scenes, they wouldn't have been much better. It would have just been them going around the same bits of bloody roundel walls over and over again, surely. I can't imagine they would have done anything that much more exciting.
That would have been cheaper because it would have just been the one room, you know? Yeah. They were just sort of looping around. Yeah. We'll get to the TARDIS stuff a little bit later, but that was the situation this episode was born into. Of course, as well, skipping ahead, Louise Jameson had decided to move on.
Yeah.
And she'd asked to be killed off. Graham Williams believed that he could still persuade her to stay on, even up to the studio recording.
Right.
And when he sort of, went, right, so we're going to do another year, she went, I've booked myself into theatre. I told you I was leaving. I'm not available for next season. And so the reason that Leela's departure is so rubbish is because they didn't have time to write her a suitable ending because they thought they could keep her. So she ends up falling in love with Andred, which you can see that Louise Jameson and the guy who plays Andred have tried to add elements of like physicality to their performance, like the way that Leela might grab his arm or they might share a look at each other or something like that. But they haven't got the space to develop that. So when eventually she does she holds Andred's hand at the end to tell the Doctor, I'm staying here with him because I've fallen in love. It does feel a bit like Playground. This is my boyfriend now. Yes, it's really... I mean, they have no chemistry. Not in that sense at all. And I think Andred's actually all right. Like he's... Maybe he doesn't come across as commander of the Gallifreyan Guard, but he's fine, and I like his character. I like the fact that he kind of goes into becoming this resistance leader, even though that really isn't fully realised on screen because you can't have a Gallifreyan civil war on a budget of 6 fucking milk bottle tops. Yeah. And, it does end up being half-assed and half-baked.
No, I just think he's so wet. It's just a bit embarrassing. I mean, I think a lot of that stuff with the Chancery Guard is embarrassing anyway. Like when Leela makes her escape, is it in episode 1 or episode 2, where she's with the Doctor in, I think it's episode 2, after he's just been attacked by the Matrix, and he tells them to expel her from the city. The guy who directed this, I did note his name down, but I can't find it now. But
Gerald Blake, who also directed The Abominable Snowmen.
Again, obviously we can't watch that to lay comment on it. But man, action sequences ain't his thing, because that moment when she then tries to escape the Chancery Guard and she sort of shittily elbows one and then pathetically kicks one. And they're like, oh, stop her. And it is so pantomime and bad. And you just think, oh my God, could you not have done like a different shot? Don't keep it on that one shot where you can clearly see she has no impact or no force between any of the strikes. It just so flim-flammy. And then like when you've got the guards chasing after the people, they just feel so useless. And like when... I know this is obviously a very Doctor Who thing for the Doctor to sort of be, one step ahead of everybody else and sort of baffle them a bit, so it sort of puts them on the back foot. But that moment in episode 1, in part 1, when he's being marched to see... Well, he's being marched along, and then he says, oh, I want to go into the Chancellor's office to speak to Barusa. And he's like, oh, you can't go in there without being being introduced
Announced.
or whatever. Announced, that's it. And he's like, well, announce me then. And he's like, all right. And I was like, oh, it's so shit. I hate it. It's like everything that is wrong with season 15.
But if you didn't have Andred, being wet, which is a fair assessment, I think, of the character.
That's why I killed him off screen in my 8th Doctor adventures, because I thought he was never going to be fighting in a time war that far.
He's not worthy of a custom figure, not with that.
Exactly.
70s blow-dried hair. But he, if you didn't have him as sort of the hero, sort of the comic relief, because I think that bit where he goes, all right, is being played for laughs, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, it's Graham Williams era Doctor Who, so anything's fair play for a giggle. But he, if you didn't have him being a sense of levity amongst the Time Lords, it would have been so boring. Everybody being so stuffy and everybody being so like we're back to we're back to Time Lords complaining about their hips again, in the story. And I love Gallifrey and I love the Time Lords, but this era of Time Lord history, it's like walking through the House of Lords. Like everybody's got some kind of an issue with their regeneration or their hip, or they're talking about, all the different scientific mumbo jumbo.
That's it. That's what I was going to bring up. There's that bit in part 1, just before the Doctor gets inaugurated as the president, where those two Time Lords are talking, and he's talking about some bloody scientific survey that he's doing, and it's all waffle and nonsense. And you can see that they're trying to do what Robert Holmes did with the two Time Lords, where they're like, talking about my hip, or, I'm not Gold Usher and all this kind of stuff, which is funny because they're talking about, it just works because it's Robert Holmes. But then this is just like, well, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, I can relate to two old blustery old men talking about, not another bloody president coming in and because we know people who are like that. We know old people like that, but we don't know old people who are talking about fucking scientific spectral this, that, ziggity zag zog dog, do we? And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are you killing the story with this 2-minute chat of bollocks?
Because we don't have money to film anything other than two old men having a chat about their computation diodes, so they have to fucking, put it in. I love the Doctor's inauguration. I love
the inflatable cushion.
That's my favourite bit. There's some really nice bits of design in this. I love the inflatable cushion. I love the Perspex keys that they try and open the TARDIS with.
Yes. And then the last one is just a Yale key in like a resin
glued
block
to a resin block, and the same with the key with the great key is just the key for the shed. It's not grand or anything, you know.
But I love that. I love that. I think that's a very clever idea that this all powerful thing is just kept in the most incongruous sort of place. Because obviously they do that whole thing with the painting, like the forest of keys. And I remember as a kid being like, "Oh, that's cool."
But the last mention of the Great Key was 3 episodes before, and then suddenly it's brought up again out of nowhere. So if you've forgotten that they were talking about the Great Key in part 1, then too bad, because we're going to bring it up here now, seemingly for the first time in the last hour and a half or something.
Kids at home are like, there it is, Grandad left it in his desk.
But I love that whole ceremony, and obviously we've talked about Tom's
Dudley's
Catholic trauma.
Is going proper, isn't he, on the organs for this
brilliant.
bit. He's
great. I want that played at my funeral as I'm carried out. But you have to bestow the sash and the
cliffhanger music
rod.
is when you go into the furnace.
Into the burner, with the rod of Rassilon on top. But I really like seeing Time Lord society and pomp and circumstance like that. That's the best stuff on Gallifrey, in my opinion, is when, obviously you get the sort of stuffy women. Element and, apart from Rodan,
from one.
who we'll get to in a minute. She must be popular, bless her heart.
That's why she's locked herself away behind a force field.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's what the force field is for, because everybody on Gallifrey is like a woman.
There's two women. There's one of the Shobogans. She's out there as well.
God,
the only two women on Gallifrey.
We'll talk about them in a minute. the Shobogans. But yeah, I all the stuff to do with like Time Lord society and pomp and circumstance and ceremony and all of that, I really like.
Yeah.
And I think it feels to me like it's a bit of a Tom suggestion because, you know, he's being ordained like a Catholic priest, you know,
yes, yeah.
he's got the big robe on and, you know, the way that Tom sort of pays reverence to that element of Time Lord society, which again, we see in The Deadly Assassin as well.
Yeah.
I really, really love.
Yeah.
But, you know, from that point on, once the Matrix rejects the Doctor, but he's still president, everything from part 2 to the end of part 4 is walking up and down corridors, going into rooms where certain characters can't hear you talking to talk about stuff, to then spring a plan.
Now we can finally talk.
Now we can finally talk. And they love bashing this fucking "is the room lead lined" over the head of the audience every 3 scenes. And it's like, we got it. We got it before. We got it when you first showed us the room. And then the Doctor takes Andred into the room later on and explains to him again, they can't hear us.
Why do you want lead-lined walls? Well, I'm worried Superman might fly by and catch a glimpse of me whilst I'm having a wank.
And make sure the door is made of kryptonite so he can't disturb me.
Get in.
But then they go into the TARDIS and the Doctor's like, they can't hear us in here, you know. It's like, well, why don't you just park the TARDIS?
Just go in there.
In the corridor and just shoot it in there. That would have saved you money building another set.
Yeah.
But I do like the Doctor's office. I think it looks really cool.
I really like the Doctor's office. I think that would have been quite a cool sort of TARDIS design with the cogs. He is actually living inside the 12th Doctor's title sequence.
Inside of Capaldi's title sequence, which is a nice little nod. And
Tom Baker should have just
business.
floated by in the title sequence.
Yeah, hello. Anyone have a brandy?
Any Vardens?
He's got some, any Fremlins. He's got some moments on his own in this story, which does sort of feel like Tom saying, I can do this without Louise Jameson. I can do this without a companion. Just give me the show and I'll take it over. But he's got a couple of nice bits. I will ask, do you think that even the sonic screwdriver wouldn't get me out of this one? Do you think that is supposed to be directed? Is that a fourth wall break? Because I've always read it as downstage rather than looking at the kids at home to get a laugh out of them.
I think it's the latter, but I think you can pass it off as you can pass that off more easily as looking downstage rather than something like the Feast of Stephen, William Hartnell saying Merry Christmas to all of you at home.
Because I don't think...
Unless he's just having a senile moment and he just thinks people are over there against that wall.
But I feel like, Tom doesn't... Correct me if I'm wrong, but I watched it a couple of days ago. I don't think he looks into the camera. It's like he's sort of looking slightly downwind of the camera, I'm just trying to justify this.
Yeah, I was going to say this is you and the Mrs. Flood stuff.
This is
all over again. Yeah,
I will absolutely admit the final shot of the episode is him looking at the camera when he devilishly smiles at his new K9. Yeah. I think even Andred has a fourth wall break in it as well, where he says something about if only I had a dog like you on my squad with K9.
There's the moment in the TARDIS where he says he's mad. One of us is mad, or or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think then he sort of, I don't think he looks at the camera though, but I think that is just him talking aloud. But again, I know what you mean. It's getting a bit too free and easy with what's going on, looking down these camera lenses.
And
but
that's of course, Tom saying this is a great idea.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. But he's brilliant in this. I gotta say, Tom is fantastic. And particularly in episode 1 and 2, he really shines in those. I mean, obviously, he does the humorous stuff very well as well, because obviously that's Tom for you. But he does it, he's so good when he's like that teetering on the edge of, is he going to have like an outburst? And particularly his stuff with Barusa and with Castellan Kellner, where he has those moments, like with Castellan and the jelly babies, and he smacks it out of his hand. Everything, you sort of feel sorry for Kellner, because you think, fuck me, he is like the worst person you would want to be working for, because he could just go at any moment, and you don't know what's going to set him off.
And Milton Johns is great as well.
He's brilliant. He is so good.
As the snivelling little bastard, little shithead. He's so good.
So salacious and conniving.
But there's a few bits in it where, like, Andred says he's casting out, he's settling old scores and casting out, old enemies and stuff like that, which you don't actually see until an episode later. And you get the impression that there is this sort of civil war brewing on Gallifrey, and the Doctor saying, people have died or people will die and all this sort of stuff. But you get no sense of that actually happening in the story.
No.
Like, they obviously don't have the money for it.
Yeah.
But
you feel like it needed sort of more of a battle sequence, or sort of like what Christopher Barry does in like Power of the Daleks, where you see the Daleks just like gunning down normal people and like running around, women running with babies in their arms and stuff.
Or maybe just wait until the Shobogans come into the Citadel and then make that the kind of point where it all kicks off, because it feels like nothing is happening on Gallifrey until they get there.
But there's only 4 people on the whole planet.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah, they've got 4 guards versus 4, dirty, West Country tramps coming in, going, taste my bow and arrow.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't the only like directorial thing that feels a bit weak, because the one thing that always annoys me is that we don't see, there's no establishing shot of the Citadel of Gallifrey. So it just cuts from, we're indoors, we're outdoors, and you just feel like, you just want a single model shot of something. Surely they could have given Matt Irvine a bit of money and said, here's some sand, here's a backdrop, and here's a big bubble. Build a fucking...
And here's a bucket and a spade. Build us the Citadel of the Time Lords.
Build us a Citadel, out of some bloody old toilet roll tubes and God knows what else. It just feels like, because they talk about it and they refer to it as a Citadel. But of course, we'll never see it until the new series, which is crazy to think that we never actually see this stuff. And I think it just makes the geography of Gallifrey feel a bit weird. Like, what's indoors, what's outdoors, where is this, where it's weird.
There's a nice bit of continuity though with the new series, with the way they've tinted or lit the exterior stuff, because it has got that burnt orange look, which is great.
And you see the planet, don't you, in episode 4 or 5?
Yes, when the Vardens are approaching.
Spaceships, which is great. And again, obviously that is then followed on in End of Time, isn't it, when we see Gallifrey then? What else? What other stuff can we talk about before we get into the...
We've got Rodan before we get to the big swerve, because Rodan is... Yes, she is definitely, the inspiration for Romana the following season.
Yeah, and she's great. I wonder
if it would have made more sense if Leela had gone off with the Shobogans at the end and lived in the wilds of Gallifrey. And then Andred and Rodan joined the Doctor as his companions. I quite like that dynamic. But Rodan she's the first female Gallifreyan we meet since Susan, which is kind of bonkers.
Yeah.
And she's obviously the inspiration for Romana the following season. I think she's good. I like the bit where... she's working on the TARDIS and the Doctor's talking to her, and there is definitely that dynamic of, I'm far more educated than you are, and I'm not listening to what you're saying because you're just talking waffle and I'm getting on with the work, which is very Dr. Romana. And I think she's quite good, but she is the only female apart from Leela and that Shobogan on the planet, so she is sort of left to hold the tools a little bit, and in that scene in the TARDIS you can see how knackered that prop is as well, like the paint streaks up the side and the drill holes in the side of the console. It's terrible. It's so
poor old thing. I've got to say, I know I moaned about some of the direction, but there are some nice shots like interesting shots, I think, in the TARDIS and other elsewhere. Like during the inauguration, you've got all those big crane shots, which is quite nice. But then in the TARDIS,
the Part 5 cliffhanger, that stuff is all handheld.
It's all handheld,
which is really cool.
Then the reprise afterwards, when like Leela comes in, all that is
and it goes down over her shoulder. But
it's great.
Why is Tom's last line dubbed? Why is "We're falling into a black star" dubbed?
Don't know.
It's really weirdly done.
Yeah, it is strange. I just always read that as they just distorted his voice because of the effects of the black star. But maybe it was dubbed. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't seem synced to his performance either, which seems odd. But
but it's cool. I mean, obviously, it's just the negative effect, isn't it, that they use for the Daleks? But it works. Yeah, it looks cool.
I do have a gripe with another companion in the story, being that K9 ruins every scene that he's in because you can't fucking hear any dialogue over the sound of his motors. And there are so many scenes where the Doctor's sort of like face to face with him. And, you can see how much Gerald Blake is struggling to get K9 into shots because everybody has to kneel down to talk to him or to get shot by him. Yeah. But there's some nice bits of like K9 and the Doctor where it's that their faces are filling the entire frame where they're having a conversation. And Tom's dynamic with K9 is great. And I love all the scenes that they're together because the Doctor sort of baffled logic meeting K9's like cold, hard computer logic is always funny. It's always funny to see them butt heads because, he's got a genuine affection for K9 and K9 is sort of developing a bit of a sense of humor as well. Yeah. But it's not, to the point where he's getting drunk and singing Merry Christmas in K9 and Company.
Yes.
But his motors ruin so many scenes because you can't hear the dialogue or all you can focus on is his ears
whirring around. Yeah.
It's horrendous. And then Tom trying to put the crown on K9's head.
Yes.
And really delicate. And then it slips and then it's like, oh God.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It's very nice that Gallifrey clearly had a lot of disabled ramps put in for K9 to go down.
Very handy. So the Doctor can't be bothered to build one for him to leave the TARDIS, but Gallifrey is very well suited to him, except for all those sequences where they're fucking running up and down stairs for what feels like 5 minutes in Part 5. Should we get onto the big twist of the story?
Yeah, I think this is it, isn't it? Like the first 4 episodes is great. You've got, like you said, we've got this intrigue with the Doctor. Is he bad? Is he not? And then obviously it's all revealed that no, it's all just been a ploy. And, he's been horrible to Leela because he needs to get Leela out of the city because her mind is going to be too open to the Vardens and the Doctor's too clever, so he can shield himself. And even Barusa, his mind isn't, quite up to scratch compared to the Doctor's. All that stuff is great. Just going back to the Shobugans and Rodan, my favourite bit. I laugh every time when they're like, so how are you going to survive out here? And Rodan's like, I have some supplies. And then she takes out a case of Smarties. Oh, fucking fantastic. Yeah, well done. That's going to keep you going, you silly fecker.
There's no hiding that, is it? Although, to be fair, if she does need a bit of energy, she could pop the blue one and the E numbers will take her up the hill.
Yeah, especially, back in the 70s, certainly would have done. It's so funny. And, it looks fucking freezing out there. Yeah. And poor Louise Jameson in that skimpy bit of nothing. And then
she does get some furs eventually.
She gets those furs over her, and then out of nowhere, a pair of very incongruous looking woolly gloves, like knitted gloves. That was probably someone on the crew said, here you go, Lou, put these on, keep your hands warm. And she's like, I'm never taking these off again.
Yeah. Terrible.
It's so funny. But we get all that. It's all revealed. They then have tried to attack the Citadel to dispel the invaders, who we've said is just like a few bloody Jerry Anderson puppets. And everything seems good. It's a shame, really, that the way that they dispel them is just like a bit of techno babble between Tom and K9. It's a nice scene.
Yeah,
it's nicely shot.
It's all based around the idea that the Doctor can't figure out what their home planet is or where they're from. But he's got access to the fucking Matrix, which knows everything. So how is that a problem for him? And the TARDIS should surely know. Yeah. You know, it seems like a bollocks, excuse.
It is weird. But anyway, what do they do? Does he like time loop them or something? He does mention that at some point.
He banishes them. He mentions time looping, then he banishes them, and then he says, I need to time loop them. So I don't know if he ever gets around to time looping them, but he certainly banishes them.
Do you know they came back in a novel? They came back in...
I thought you were going to say Big Finish. My anger was rising then.
They probably have, but they came back in a New Adventures novel.
Right.
No Future, I think. I read it. They team up with another Doctor Who villain, and I was very surprised to suddenly see the Vardens in this. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but it's quite good. But it's all to do with, because obviously they can the whole thing is that they can travel down any sort of wavelength or electrical signal. It's all to do with electronics, like cassette players or something, if I remember rightly. It's what's his name? Human Nature writer. Oh my God, Paul Cornell. Yeah. My God, it's quite fun. Okay. Yeah, so there you are. They had life in them yet.
Sadly.
just about.
Frustratingly. The Doctor sends the Vardens away, and we do have a literal sort of we've won moment.
Yes,
and the Doctor's sort of gesticulating.
Brewster disappears for episode 4.
Brewster completely vanishes, which is really odd. So I guess he's just been sat in his office, just stinking up the room with his farts or something.
Yeah.
And then,
as far as he's concerned, the Vardens are still here.
Yeah. He says, "Who are these guys? What's happened?
Where are the tinfoil men?"
On the stairs of the Panopticon, there they are, Derek Dedman and his crew, and
Dudley fucking
amazing.
Killing it.
Dudley Simpson, one of his best. I think his score through this whole story is really good, actually. I think this is a proper classic Dudley. Yeah. And there's so many elements of it that just sound like Dudley Simpson. Like that initial kind of sting when you see the Sontarans stood on the steps is like every Dudley Simpson, I need to underline this moment sort of cue. Like all the same instruments that you've heard in Genesis of the Daleks, and it's all there, and it sounds great.
And even the stuff in like when they go to Outer Gallifrey, the more alien sound, because he's kind of not used that so much in that period of Doctor Who, but it sort of harkens back to John Pertwee sort of synth sounds and like a bit of Genesis of the Daleks, like,
and you get that with the Varden ship at the start as well. Like that little tune is great.
And it's nice that a lot of the not a lot of them, but several cues from this story still exist, because so little of Dudley Simpson's sort of like Pertwee and Tom Baker music, just doesn't exist anymore.
If I was a BBC archivist and they were like, you can keep 2 reels, you can either keep this Jeff, what's his name, Bladen score from Revenge of the Cybermen, or you can keep this from Invasion of Time because it's got that Sontaran cue in it, I'd be like, no, burn the Bladen stuff to oblivion. Let's keep this good shit around. But even the direction in that bit as well, like the push into Store as he gets his gun out, Tom's face, and then the reprise from sort of the week after where they come down the stairs and you've got that great sort of like lumbering synthy bass tone with every step they take down the stairs of the Panopticon. It's just so cool. And then Derek Dedman speaks, and Graham Williams apparently hangs his head because he hated Derek Dedman's accent for Store.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, he does sound like a Mitchell brother, and he kind of looks like a Mitchell brother.
Yeah.
But and all the other Sontarans are seemingly taking their cues from him. In that, one of them need to be husky. One
of them sounds like a fucking ice warrior.
It's
like this. I'm like, fuck, you're playing the wrong part, mate. Come on.
Totally.
And you're about 3 foot too short to be playing a fucking ice warrior.
So, he's trying to get it in. But he's like, I think Derek Dedman's fine. I've got no problem with his performance. There's maybe one bit where...
he's a bit one note.
He's a bit one note, but then he does take it a bit too far in the bit when they free the Sontaran that got trapped in the plant.
Yeah.
And he takes his helmet off. I have got other duties. And he's like,
he looks
goes
so fucking...
bog-eyed and starts staring around the room like he's punch drunk. And then...
Yes.
And also, one of my favourite bits, obviously we have the Sontaran, Stuart Fell eating shit, jumping over the pool, which is great.
That is brilliant. I can remember, that is like a classic moment in our house where we just couldn't believe our eyes, and we were like, we've got to show this to Dad, and we would like say, here, watch this, and he'd be like, feck me, what is this shit?
It is amazing. It lives in infamy. I watched a video on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and it was like out of context British TV moments, and it had like a couple million views, and that scene is in it.
I'm not surprised. I mean, that is brilliant. It's just such a good. I remember watching it and thinking like, was this meant to happen? Like as a kid, I was like, what? And then it's like so obvious that he just completely mistimed the job. I mean, you can't blame the poor bugger. He's got all this fucking shit on him. He can't see anything. He's got a fucking bucket on his head. It's hilarious.
And even on real Wikipedia and on Doctor Who Wikipedia, they're very, very quick to say, oh well, the gravity is different on Sontar, so it's this is an understandable error. And it's like he fucking stacked it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. He ate shit. It's so funny. There's so there's that. I was going to say something else as well.
Although this is probably the shittest Sontarans we have seen. Because up until this point, it's all been, oh my God, the original Sontaran actor whose name has escaped. Kevin Lindsay. Fuck me, my brain today. I think Doctor Who is just like shit on my head with this new series. all my knowledge is just like seeped out of me. Kevin Lindsay obviously is so good as both Steyr and Lynx, and then suddenly we get a very different performance. So it stands out as like, oh, this is weird. He's clearly not as good as the other guy. But it is nice to see more than one, because obviously this is the first time that we ever see that happen. So there is that. Yeah,
nice to have 3. Thank you very much, BBC Wardrobe Department. Something I noticed when Storr takes his helmet off in the TARDIS and we see him for the first time.
Yeah.
I think Dudley has a bit of a score for Sontaran helmet reveals.
It harkens back, doesn't it, to like the Time Warrior and stuff.
Yeah, because the one in the Sontaran experiment is like super dramatic and quite, that electronic sort of drill.
Yeah,
but this is a bit more subdued, which doesn't really match the pace at which Derek Deadman is performing at, which is like, I need Rosed to know that I'm a bad guy and that I'm a bit dumb.
That gets on my nerves.
Yeah, that is
Lord.
that whenever my dad does, an impression of a Doctor Who baddie, he does Derek Deadman as Storr. It's always Doctor. So, it's okay that the Sontaran kind of element in the story, but the trouble is the last 2 episodes. In fact, it's a problem with the whole of the story.
There's that amazing bit where the Doctor and Barusa have to run away from the Sontarans.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's like, oh, I've got a force field on, but the batteries are running out. And they're like, well, we better fucking peg it for the bloody TARDIS. Yeah. The Sontarans are like literally a foot behind them. It is ridiculous. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, there's like a massive
They get to
gap.
the Panopticon and there's no near them.
It's like, what the fuck's going on there?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that corridor is clearly not long enough to get them and the Sontarans in. So
no.
It is such a shame. I mean, there's a nice line there, isn't it? When he's like, oh, I'm getting too old for this. And then Tom's like, I'm getting too young for this.
It's so undignified.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. But it's looking back on it, you're like, oh dear, just so many of these moments just needed a little rethink or something.
So you have the last 2 episodes, and my main problem with the story is that the story it goes missing in action for the last 2 episodes anyway, so there's nothing going on. But it's more that for the episodes that precede it, they go up one end of the corridor and go, okay, we need to go to the other end of the corridor now to do something with a force shield. They go and do something with the force shield. Then they go, okay, well now we need to turn off the what's the shield around Gallifrey called?
The transduction barrier.
Yeah. So we'll go and turn the transduction barrier off. Okay, that means they can come through. Then we'll do some business on Gallifrey. Then Storr turns up and he's like, I need the transduction barrier opened more so my fleet can come in. Okay, so we'll go and open the transduction barrier, but the Doctor's looped it to his TARDIS, so then they have to go to the TARDIS. It's the whole story is just, can you open the door for us, please? That is it. There's nothing else happening in this. And then they get lost in the TARDIS maze, and you
could speed this up and put the Benny Hill music over the top and
basically
cut out the dialogue bits, and that is just it. It's just them running around.
I'd like somebody to do a supercut of this episode of people just walking up and down corridors in silence, because there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that.
And the constant looping of going up and down that one staircase that they use for a little bit in episode 5, but it's not in any of the episodes before. Yeah. It just seems to turn up for that one part.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we have the run around the TARDIS, and I remember finding it very kind of entertaining as a kid.
Exactly. Yeah, same.
I was just sat there, and it got to as soon as they kind of barricade the door to the console room, and after Storr has sort of had his first assessment of the room, and you see him with his mask off. Incidentally, there's a bit on location where he's talking to Kellner. And his makeup isn't finished, and you can see the big hole around his eye that's like flapping with latex, which just looks awful.
Yeah, they've not given him the panda eyes, have they? They've not blacked out his eyes or finished off. Yeah, so bad.
But the mask, I think, looks really good. And, he's obviously... He's not much of a looker, Derek Deadman, in real life, as we know from having watched Never Say Never Again, because he's the butler.
Oh, yes, he was in that.
He's the concierge in that, isn't he?
Yeah.
And, so he was great casting, I think, and I don't have a problem with Storr as a Sontaran at all. But he goes into the console room, and the Doctor and his friends run into the recesses of the TARDIS. And from the point where the Sontarans start trying to break down the door, which is another dub as well, because that Sontaran, obviously... They couldn't hear him, or his voice was so shit that somebody's dubbed him afterwards saying, there's some kind of locking device. It's like, what, a lot?
He moves his hands so weird as well. It's so...
And the way their fingers are moulded is really... The way their hands are moulded as well is really weird.
Yeah.
They don't look like they can actually manipulate their fingers.
Do you know what? I was watching it, and I was like... Are those actually his hands? Have they just given him some pincers to hold?
Yeah, it just
solid,
looks like
don't they?
They're stuffed with concrete,
It's so weird.
And so they as soon as they break down the barrier, because you've had all that business of the Doctor and Rodan and Leela going round and round in circles.
Yeah, my nephews watched this the other day, and apparently Emilio was like, before they mention it, he was like, "This is just they're just going around the same fucking bit." He didn't say that. He's 11 years old.
You bastard. But so they go round and round in circles, and you do, I forgive Doctor Who a lot, given the fact that we're still doing this podcast after the last 2 series.
Yeah.
I forgive Doctor Who a lot. But it is just the most egregious. We have run out of money, and we don't have. Maybe we don't even have a fucking finished script. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like the script for episode 6 is 2 pages long.
Yeah,
and it's just the dialogue, and they walk around the TARDIS. There's some bits that are quite nice, I guess. Like there's the Doctor tricking the Sontaran into the big man-eating plant.
That's great. I like that. That's good fun.
The bit where they have a sit down in the sort of the garden, and the Doctor's like, right, I'm ready to go, I've had a rest, and they shoot back off again.
Yeah. Brucer with the newspaper, the Titanic, and he's like, oh, I have nothing to do with this, I assure you. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's enjoying himself.
That seems to be like a frequent thing on the TARDIS, having a cocktail. Because
in one of those big swirly straws.
Turno brings them back, doesn't he, later on?
Oh, it was very, very futuristic in 1978, wasn't it, to have a swirly straw. And so, the bit, again, which is staging and blocking, and the fact that it's not well thought out, and they don't have the time to think about how they're going to do this properly. When they go into the sick bay, and they run down the corridor, and Andred closes the door behind them, but Storr is already halfway up the corridor behind them, and it's only a glass fucking door, so there is absolutely no chance that Storr can't see them. And you always have that in dramas where okay, they are definitely within eyeshot, but because we pan away, it's like the audience kind of has that thing where they go, okay, well, if we can't see them, they probably can't see them either. Because there's lots of bits in the Panopticon where Leela's being chased by guards and they turn the camera around. It's like, she's definitely still within eyeshot, but we're meant to pretend they can't see her. That is all one shot. So you can't pretend that Storr hasn't clocked that Andred's closed the door and then hidden in the cubicle.
He's got his helmet on. You can barely see who it is.
Okay. I will buy the helmet.
But I mean, it is like the shittest game of hide and seek ever. You're like, you're behind that curtain, mate.
And then Andred gets injured by virtue
by
the video effect going over his arm.
Yeah.
And then he's holding his arm, and then Leela's like, "Oh no, you're injured," and you're meant to think it's dramatic, and it's just terrible. Meanwhile,
the best bit is when
K9,
Leela throws the dagger and gets the Sontaran in the probic vent. That's good.
Yeah, and Nesbin does it as well. One of the Shibugans, he gets a good shot in too. So James Nesbin. So Rodan and K9 are building this thing. Rodan's building it under hypnosis, and she's built this fabled Time Lord weapon, the DMAT gun.
Yeah.
And it's powered by the Great Key. So Tom puts it in, and Barusa's like, "You can't use that thing. It's against all the known laws of time."
Yeah.
And the Doctor's like, "Well, are you gonna fucking blast Storr's head off, or am I? So let me do this." So he goes into the Panopticon. Oh, meanwhile, Kellner, the little bum weasel's been fucking hanging around with another Sontaran, and they go into the art gallery, which becomes
the power plant,
power
isn't
room.
it? Or, power room. That's it. I mean, that's all quite fun. That in this weird Gallifreyan sort of way that the power room would be, an art gallery. I don't know. Who cares? What I love is Milton Johns is obviously fucking freezing his bollocks off in that hospital. That in a lot of the scenes, he has got his Time Lord robes wrapped so far around him. It's insane. I watched it. I was like, has he got his things on backwards or something? And I think he's just so cold that he's either so cold or they've forgotten the under part of his robes. So he's like wrapped it round him like fucking Batman or Nosferatu. It's insane. It's mad. And then of course we get to the end, which is Squall just is like, I'm gonna fucking blow myself up. Why not, mate?
Yeah, and we get that nice bit of music from Dudley Simpson, which is like kind of
that sax bit.
The sax bit with the gun.
It's like, what is this?
I don't know. Is he supposed to look like?
Tom's got his hat on like he's some sort of fucking assassin.
Yeah, well, I think is it supposed to be he's like some 40s gangster or something? I think that's supposed to be the.
The guns of Navarone.
Maybe it is supposed to be a reference to something in particular. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so then that is a great shot where he's got his leg up and he's balancing the DMAT gun on his leg, and it's like, don't fuck with this guy. He's got a jacket lined with miniatures and he's just done a line of coke. Don't fuck with Tom Baker right now. He's got a gun in his hand. And so Storr is there and he's like, I'm going to, blow us all sky high. And then does the most panto-dramatic lowering of something to the floor.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor blows him up. And then, then we go back to the TARDIS and the Doctor turns up and they think it might be one of the Sontarans that's stomping up towards them. And he's lost all memory of the events that have just happened. He doesn't remember becoming president of Gallifrey. He doesn't remember the Sontarans or the Vardens or any of it. And Kellner gets away scot-free. Nobody tells him, by the way,
disappears.
You've just been like kicking people out that you don't like. You're a political, loose cannon. And then he just goes back to his job as Castellan.
Yeah. Well, You can get away with anything on Gallifrey, clearly.
Clearly. So then, the Doctor, has his little moment of, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and Leela decides not to come with him because she's had enough of working with Tom Baker. And I've got, I'm appearing in Shakespeare next week. I'm not coming with you. And
it's a shame, isn't it? Because Leela started off as such a good character under Holmes and Hinchcliffe, and then I feel particularly, during the Graham Williams era, it goes less from let's take this savage character and do the Eliza Doolittle thing and make her educated and through the Doctor's experiences and all this sort of stuff. And she just becomes a bit, oh no, she's just a dim-witted savage, and there's like the moments with K9. She just doesn't change. She's just simple.
She does have moments where she kind of understands the Doctor and what he's talking about a little better.
Yeah,
and obviously the trust that she has in him is really lovely. Like, I know that the Doctor isn't evil or whatever. That's really nice.
Those are the really good bits. And Louise Jameson does them ever so well. Like that moment where she says, you keep your president and I'll keep my Doctor. She knows that he's got that plan, like you said. She just feels so wasted, bless her, because she's so good, and you see her in those little moments. And obviously she, when she's chatting to Rodan as well, and Rodan's sort of waffling on and she goes, oh yes, one must, yes. And she's like taking the piss out of her, that's great. And I do wonder, was that in the script or was that just Louise trying to make something of,
I think there's a lot of that happening in this story.
Yeah. So it does feel like she was too good for what that part became in the end. She
is such a great actor.
Yeah.
I think, and taking it away from this story, given the lack of anything they have to work with, either an interesting story or money or anything like that, she is pulling double duty and she's doing a really amazing job of... she makes every second on screen count, and, you're always looking at her because... she's got so many little, kind of glances and looks, and she's always animated, and she's always, quizzical, and she's always a joy to sort of see on screen. Like she's such a great actor.
Yeah. If you watch her in the back of scenes, she's always doing something. She's very conscious. Yeah. It's not like some people where you watch them and they're clearly stood there thinking, I wonder what I'm going to have for my dinner tonight when this all finishes.
Yeah. Or they're waiting for their bit for them to come in with their line. They're just like almost mouthing the other actors' lines, waiting to do. But what is that, Doctor? She's always she's great, and that was a real big takeaway is how fantastic she is. But then she gets absolutely shafted with her departure, which is such a shame. It's and I do like the Doctor's not farewell to her.
Yes, yeah.
It's very in keeping with the Doctor and very in keeping with Tom. It feels like it makes sense, but it does add to the sense of, that was a bit underwhelming,
Yeah.
If they'd given the Doctor something to say to her, it might have felt different, but...
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's so blink and you'll miss it, all of the little, touching of hands or little glances between her and Andred, that none of it, that it just doesn't feel earned at the end. That whole, we're in love. Are you?
Yeah.
Crikey.
And K9 deciding to stay as well.
Yeah. It's like treacherous bastard.
So I've got 100 of you in boxes in the TARDIS.
She's got bloody more chemistry with Rodan. She should, if it had been the 21st century, she'd have run off with her. And that would have felt more earned.
100%.
But like you said, she should have gone off into the wilderness with Rodan and her packet of Smarties.
The only two women on Gallifrey getting it on.
What happened to the other one? What happened to the Shabugan girl? Is she still
she's
around?
in the background of various shots, isn't she? Because she gets killed. She's definitely in... She's in the Panopticon where the Sontarans turn up. I don't know if she gets shot by one.
Did she get killed later? Yeah, she might get killed later on. And the Shabugans go, oh, bugger, she was the only one keeping our little society alive.
We're all doomed. Now we have to ingratiate ourselves into Time Lord society so we can get to know Rodan better.
No one regenerates. Every Time Lord gets killed, just dies.
Yeah.
And
we get a little reference to like Time Lord biology with that old fella being led out into the cold saying, I'm on my 10th body, I'm starting to wear a bit thin and all that.
Yeah.
And then
shut up, we'll put 3 bullets in your head and that'll sort you out.
That'll sort you out. And then, then Tom goes into the TARDIS and takes out a box which says K9 Mark II on it, but is definitely just full of whiskey. And then grins maniacally as the camera's like, I'm about to have a long sesh. It's between seasons, I won't see you until the spring.
I reckon there was... The reason why there's so few women on Gallifrey is there was like some sort of Time Lord version of the cold going around, and everyone sort of had a forced regeneration, but the side effect is you always regenerate into a man. And that's and that's why Rodan was like, I've shielded myself away from everyone else. Go. I ain't catching it. I'm not getting the Time Lord equivalent of
2 meters.
I'm not getting Time Lord COVID and growing bollocks.
That's the symptom, is it? You can start getting growths on your gonads. Right, so that was the invasion of time. Let's have a quick look at what people thought online. Matt, if you want to give us a quick roundup of your thoughts and ting.
It's, we sort of went into this. I remember last week you sort of said, this is kind of like the first time Doctor Who does like a real finale, which I think is kind of right, other than like, big ones like Planet of the Spiders and stuff. But it does have a very season finale sort of feel, which classic Doctor Who generally doesn't, with stories like Time Flight or, but this actually feels like it's trying to be big, but it just falls short of the mark because, like I said, money ran out and there were too many problems behind the scenes. So I appreciate everything it tries to do at the start, but unfortunately it does just become a bit of a Benny Hill runaround towards the end. And everything that it tries to do at the beginning just sort of falls flat. But I do enjoy it. I don't hate it. It's certainly one of the better episodes of season 15, at least.
Yeah.
It's not like a real clunker like Underworld. It's just a shame, really, that the production values are sort of fighting against it.
Yeah, I'm with you entirely on that. I still have an affection for it. Good performances all round, and those first 4 parts are fine in terms of pacing. I think you're strung along with the performances and the mystery of what's going on long enough that it works.
Yeah, it almost could have just ended at episode 4 in a way,
and it probably should have really because. But then again, if it finished at episode 4, I think it wouldn't have been remembered for anything.
No.
There's nothing in it. That's
damn squib.
Yeah, and then the assessment I always had of it was like it's crap until the Sontarans turn up, but actually it's fine.
The reverse, isn't it?
Then the Sontarans turn up and it's just boring and crap at that point.
Yeah,
and
the story just disappears.
Once you get over that initial shock reveal of oh my god the Sontarans are in it, the next 2 episodes are such a chore to get through. I was literally looking at the clock like winding down like 5 minutes felt like 20 minutes, and it was nauseatingly long. I
think as a kid, you're sort of rose tinted glasses of like, oh, you've got these Sontarans. There's a lot of Sontarans, which like I said, we're not used to. Oh, we get to explore the TARDIS. You never get to see the TARDIS. But then as an adult, you're like, well, this is just a shit old hospital that they're filming in, and it's very weird. Why are they doing this? So it's funny, isn't it, really, how our opinions change as we get older.
Seemingly we're finding everything that Doctor Who does shit these days, even Tom Baker stories. So let's go to the comments. Make me an offer. Hello, James says, when I came to edit the season 15 Blu-ray trailer, I realised how the story seriously delivered on giving the best Tom moments from that season. Despite how shabby it looks, Tom's volcanic menace in those early episodes is thrilling. And it is.
He's so good.
He seems to have lost the bounce in his hair is the only thing. I don't know if it's by virtue of having to wear that crown. But he looks like a cocker spaniel. Like it's all drooped. There's no elevation in his hair at all. John Rob 5000. I love that the TARDIS has an abandoned hospital ward, a skeezy hotel pool, and a Victorian farmhouse kitchen. But I really love Tom in full barking mode. Jack Ashley, I really enjoy it. I love how it takes you on one story the entire time until the Sontaran cliffhanger where it totally flips it on its head. Great fun, a bit silly, nothing groundbreaking or perfect, but an enjoyable romp. Who photography, the ideas are very good, but the budget and tone aren't there to make it work.
Yeah.
That said, it manages to keep itself afloat. The charm of Tom, Louise, and some of the guest cast are the life support that keeps this story going. Episode 4's cliffhanger is obviously excellent. Sontaran design isn't as bad as reputation suggests.
No.
Not awful, but equally not the classic it wants to be. And the last comment here, we'll do Anakin Larnock. Oh boy, this one is a doozy. To be transparent, I love the first 4 parts. I think Tom Baker's acting is seriously a highlight of his tenure, and Leela's subplot, while not making that much sense in the end, works for her character. The mystique around Gallifrey is interesting, but then the Sontarans show up, and all of that atmosphere and suspense goes away, and nothing interesting happens for nearly an hour until one of the worst companion departures ever. The first 4 parts would probably get an 8 out of 10, but then as a whole, I couldn't give it more than a 6. Such a waste of a good idea. I desperately hope the novel is better.
Yeah, I've never read the Target novelisation. So I don't know. I have to give it a go.
I've never read it either. Well, that was the invasion of time, and it bloody sapped all the time I have left to have any energy or enthusiasm for classic Doctor Who out of me. But it was fun. It was a fun little run around, and I'm glad that I'm glad we've finally scratched that one off the list.
There's another one. There's another one gone. Another one down. That was it. That was it. That was Invasion of Time. That was a thing. We talked about for an hour. But what's next? Where to next on our magical mystery tour?
Very nice. If you are on our Patreon, you can enjoy some more Tom madness next week with our commentary of Hyperland. Or week after next, excuse me. So that is a Douglas Adams, Tom Baker joint. And it's very odd, very prescient. And I think will be entertaining in the same way that Tom's Who on Earth is Tom Baker was baffling and a bit worrying. Yeah. I think it's got similar energy. And it's very 1990. I'm
sold already. I can't wait to give it a watch.
Excited for that. Then the next mainline episode of the Review of Death is the first IRL Review of Death.
My God.
Since March 2023. So you've got that to look forward to. And we've got a review of Army of Ghosts and Doomsday with Johnny as part of all of that as well. Yep. And plenty of commentaries happening over the month of July and the beginning of August over on the Patreon. So head on over there and get your fill, because there's going to be a lot coming through July and August with all of us together. So we'll have some fun with that.
Fantastic stuff. Well, thank you as always for watching, and we'll see you soon. And if anything newsworthy breaks about Doctor Who's future in the short term, we will jump on and do another episode. But until then, we just have to wait and see what happens. But thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.